Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, this is so wonderful to see such a full hall. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Jania Okwechime. I'm a partner at Deloitte, and I lead AI and data for Africa. But I'm also inspired from the previous speaker to also introduce myself personally. I'm Armenian, but as you can tell from my name, I'm also Nigerian by proxy. And in fact, my official title, the minute I enter the airport, is Niger wife. So from one Niger wife to my fellow Nigerians, welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. So in the next few minutes, I want to talk about generative AI, why now is so prominent, and we heard what it's going to be doing in the next few years. Why is it now that we're all talking about it? What is it really? How it's impacting the financial services industry? And the fact that it's not all fun and games, but there are some risks, and we need to mitigate that to be able to innovate with trust. Then we're going to also touch up a little bit on the implication on talent and the role of the board in organizations and leadership. And finally, we're going to talk about the importance of AI strategy, which was also mentioned previously by my fellow colleague. So let's get started. So AI, in some shape or form, for those of you who've been around, you know that it's been around for a very, very long time. In fact, the very first perceptron, which is the very first cell of a neural network, or you can consider it as the great-grandfather of ChatGPT, was created in the 50s. So the concept is not new. And I'm sure you've heard it with different names. First it was artificial intelligence, then became neural networks, then just simply AI, and then machine learning, more recently data science, and now generative AI. So it's been around for decades in some shape or form, but why is it now that is at the forefront of everyone's mind? Well, there are several factors. The very first one is explosion of data. Everything we do today generates data. Data doesn't sit in some rows and columns in Excel spreadsheets in your core banking applications. Every time you pick up the phone to make a phone call, that's data. Every time you are chatting with someone or uploading a photo on Facebook, those are all data. Every time you're sending an email or uploading a video, that's data. In fact, 90% of the data that exists today was generated in the last 2 years. I'd like you to really think about that. That just shows the exponential growth that we're seeing. So with that amount of data, we do need advanced technology to harness it. Also now, we don't have infrastructural challenges. With cloud being so available and accessible, we actually have the data available to us to use. And finally, even regulatory requirements are expecting you, regulations are expecting you to harness technology to meet your obligations. And finally, if your competitors are using AI and technology, you want to use that to get out there in the market faster. But that's more traditional AI. We all know about traditional AI. It can do wonderful things. If you're a bank, you can make predictions based on data. Do I give this person a loan or do I not give them a loan? Or how can I predict stock market prices in the future? So what is this generative AI then? I always say, just like teaching your child, an AI is a child that you teach it. Just like how to your child, you might be teaching different flashcards, images of cats and dogs. That's a cat, that's a dog, and then hopefully you train them to predict what a cat and what a dog is, right? And then you show them different sentences. This is an apple, this is a pear. And the child learns and then makes some predictions. Generative AI not only can learn that, but it can actually learn the syntax of what is done. It was mentioned large language models. It's like teaching your child the language, but you're teaching the child the syntax, the grammar, that a sentence has a verb, has a subject, has an object. Now go ahead and form many sentences. And that's what generative AI does. And it has also been around for a while. I'm sure those of you who have iPhones, there was this trend that you press the space in the middle and it just predicts what word you're going to say. Sometimes it would predict gibberish sentence, but it would still go ahead and predict something. Now imagine, because it had access to your chat history, now imagine powerful language models that have access to all the books ever written, all the architectural blueprints ever created, all the code ever generated. So it can go ahead and actually create those images, create those videos. So these are some of the images, and what's important is that this is done by natural language processing. That means you no longer need to have Python coding skills. You can actually just speak to it, and it can get things done. So example here is create couture dress from garbage bags, or create an avocado chair, because it knows what avocado looks like, it knows what chair looks like, and it goes ahead and creates an avocado chair. And my favorite is the picture of the futuristic house. That was my 5-year-old's school project. He was supposed to create the future home. And he went to Midjourney and he said, my future home is going to be a 2-story duplex that can fly, looks like a helicopter, but is not a helicopter, and it has solar panels. And voila. He went and he created that, and he presented it at school very proudly saying, Mama, when I told them AI created this, none of my classmates knew what AI is. So it's his mission to go and teach them. So it can do wonderful things, right? Generative AI can create unicorns playing classical music on Mars, but what does it mean in business? What can it really do in practice? And that's what I'm going to spend the next few minutes on. Generative AI is impacting businesses, especially financial services industries, on 3 different pillars. It's actually transforming the way we do business. It's now creating synthetic data so that you can actually use scenarios instead of just hypothesizing them. You can go ahead and generate those strategic scenarios, see the outcome, and come back and make the decisions. It can actually enhance your customer experience, and this is something for me that I think gives us a phenomenal opportunity here on the continent. These kind of technology means we can create technology for Africa, from within Africa, that suits our purposes. And what does that mean in customer service? That means we can speak to our customers in the local languages. You can speak Igbo, you can speak Hausa. You don't have to have everything in English because the technology was built in the West and it was shipped here, and that's what we're stuck with. We actually have opportunity to create and truly personalize to our customer experience. And not just that, get it to pick your company's culture, your company's tone. If you're speaking with an elderly lady, there's certain respect culturally demanded. You build that. It's like training several contact center agents, but having to train them individually. You can actually create thousands of these agents with generative AI. And then finally, I think one of the most powerful advantages of generative AI is to actually unlock your organization's knowledge. Imagine having a Google search specifically for your organization. So your staff can actually go in there and search and find out what certain policies are. Say, I've just come back from maternity leave. I need to know what other extra leave I have. So these are some of the things. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to go a little bit into some of the applications in financial services. But in general, you can actually categorize the benefits of generative AI into increasing efficiency, doing cost reduction, bringing more creativity like in marketing that was mentioned before, and all in all, really transforming your business. But let's dig deeper a little bit. One of the main applications that we are seeing today, and we are helping our clients today, is using generative AI for fraud detection. Do you remember I mentioned traditional AI needs to learn from historic data? Let's pick a bank, a fictitious bank, for example, and they want to build a robust AI model. What they do with traditional AI, they look at 1 year's transaction, they pick what's a genuine transaction, they pick what's a fraudulent transaction. And a large bank would have over 100 million transactions a month. But hopefully, if you're looking at the history of the bank, maybe you want to have only a handful of fraudulent transactions. So imagine training your child, like in this case, training your AI, give 5 examples of fraud transactions and give 1 million examples of genuine transaction. That child, or in this case AI, doesn't stand a chance to truly understand what fraud looks like and predict. Now fast forward to generative AI, and remember its ability to synthesize. You now use generative AI to synthesize fraudulent data based on the market you're in, based on the risky products that you have, and based on the demographic of your customers. Now you have 1 million fraudulent transactions, 1 million genuine transactions. Now you build a model. Now you're giving that model a fair chance to learn. And surely that then results into a more robust fraud detection. Another key challenge in financial services industry is KYC onboarding. That's know your customer. And more often than not, you don't realize you have a problem in KYC when a transaction has been alerted as a suspicious transaction. Now you need to go back to your client's file and check what do they look like, how did they open this account, what was the intentions, and we need to contact this person. And you realize that there is no contact number for this person, or the address hasn't been updated in 10 years, or the directors of company have not been refreshed for the past 15 years. At that point, it's too late, because you have a very short window to report this while you don't have information to go ahead and contact. With generative AI, you can actually, with its ability to read documents and summarize documents and understand the documents in a way that humans do, you can actually scan through all of your KYC documents, understand discrepancies, where instead of a phone number, you've got gibberish there, where instead of an address, you have blank there, and actually identify those, go a step further and say, draft an email to this person to ask them to come to the branch, or to ask them provide an updated ID. And that can go a long way when you are a busy bank, a very small compliance unit that needs to run things efficiently. Again, another example of document synthesis, the same way generative AI can read through new regulations, read your policy document, and check discrepancies and say, with the new regulation, you need to add a clause. For example, CBN a few months back shrunk the window of STR reporting from 7 days to 24 hours. If your policy says you have 7 days, then you're in trouble. So it goes ahead, identifies, suggests a new clause, and goes and sends everyone an email and says, come for a training scheduled at this time. So these are some of the abilities that are happening now, and it's real. And some of the banks are already using that. For example, NatWest did use it for fraud detection, and they reported reduced fraud of 6%. Also, Goldman Sachs used that internally to improve operations, and they reported 27% productivity, which is also similar to the statistics that was previously showing, between 20 to 60% productivity gain. But for me, the most exciting part, as I said, is that each and every one of us can have our own generative AI assistant. Every persona, every position in a bank can have their own generative AI assistant. And how is that going to transform the business? Let's give you an example. Look at an executive assistant, a CFO, needs to see the financial reports or the financial health check of the organization every month. What happens typically is that the data sits in core banking application, and IT personnel needs to extract that data, then somebody has to do the calculations, then somebody has to put the figures in a report in a nice way that the CFO likes, and that takes between days to weeks. Now imagine the CFO had ability to directly ask questions. My AI assist, tell me what's our month-on-month profit over the past 3 months? What are our liquidation risks? And so many different questions. And that is possible, and that is happening now. The same with human resources, personalized onboarding, creating job descriptions and putting it out there. And similar to customers and also sales and marketing. We've got actually a demo of the customers that I'm going to show you at the end of this session. So far we've heard that it can do so many wonderful things, and it can do it now. And data is key. But while data is the fuel that runs generative AI, the race is not just for data, but it's also for trust. So risk is not an inherent property of AI. It needs to be thought through, and it needs to be built in. And how do we do that? As a bank, a financial services industry, you're very heavily regulated, and we're very good at meeting with compliance regulations. Regulator says do X, Y, Z, we do X, Y, Z, check, we're compliant, everyone's happy. However, when it comes to AI, the whole world is still trying to get to grips with it. With the very first regulation, the comprehensive AI regulation, the AI EU Act, only came into effect this April. And it's still being rolled out in Europe, which means organizations cannot afford to wait for a regulation to come out. And organizations need to be proactively putting guardrails around it. Which is why at Deloitte, we've created this trustworthy AI framework, which is on key pillars like fair and impartial. how do you know that the algorithm that you're building is fair and not biased? And these risks are real. There was this famous case of a North American company who was using AI in their recruitment process to recruit for data engineers. It was only after second or third round of interview they realized we don't have any female candidates coming through. What's going on? And in theory, they had done all the right things. They had given it the company's last 10 years of CVs and successful candidates. And it turns out they were only males. So when the algorithm was seeing anything like women's volleyball captain, it would automatically reject. Or president of women's society, reject. Even though they had used historic data, but what they didn't realize was that 10 years ago, there were not that many female data engineers. Fast forward to today, that's not the case. Right? So you're unintentionally building bias in your system based on the data that you've used. And it's important that what you're building, the data you're training on, it fits your customer demographic and the audience. So those are some of the things that you can put to mitigate risks. Other things like responsibility and accountability. Going back to our compliance example, if something happens to the bank and they are non-compliant, the chief compliance officer is responsible. They can get financial penalty, reputational damage, or worst case scenario, the person can go to jail. Do you think a robot cares about sitting in a jail cell? I don't think so, right? So how do you build governance around it? Who is responsible? And that's why we're going to touch up more on the role of the talent and the responsibility of the leadership. But before I go to that, there's also the big factor, talent. I always get asked the question, is AI going to take over our jobs? My answer is no. Similar to the sentiment of the previous speaker, AI is not taking over jobs, but AI is transforming the jobs, is transforming the roles. And it's the role of the board, the role of the leadership to upskill their teams, to help them, empower them to learn new skills. We heard about prompt engineering, the whole understanding the language and knowing the kind of questions you need to ask to get to the right answers. And it is very critical. And some of the key critical roles of leadership and board is to look at talent, invest in the capability. First of all, they themselves need to be aware of what AI can and cannot do. And finally, to make sure there is a strategy in place. And why is strategy important? And this was also mentioned. Because what we see, so Deloitte did a survey of 23 CEOs of leading companies globally. And what came very clear is that there is a clear divide between the business and the IT or technology functions about the impact of AI. While IT and the tech team think that AI is going to completely solve all their problems, business actually thinks AI is not going to do anything. Why do you think that is? Because AI is being built in silos in different functions of a business. And if you do that and there's no clear alignment between your AI solutions and your business strategy, you're not going to get anywhere. Which is why it's important that you actually build an AI strategy, develop an AI strategy that is aligned with your business, which means what are our business ambitions? Where do we want to be in a year's time, in 2 years' time? What is the key problem we're trying to solve? Now go back to your data, now go back to AI and say, okay, we're going to use AI to get to that business goal. And you measure that as you go forward. And that's the only way that you can have sustained growth and success in the business. And then this brings me to one of the last slides, which is how AI is changing the game. And again, as per our recent reports that we published, we believe there are 3 different games. And AI is a game changer in the banking and finance sector. Game 1 is those organizations who are using AI to improve their current processes, which is great. This is how we're doing things now manually. Let's use AI to do it better. But then there's game 2. Game 2 is, now that we know Gen AI can do this, how do we come up with new processes, new way of working that is going to get us a few steps further? So that's your game 2. But game 3 is looking at not just 1 year, not just 2 years, but in the next 5 to 10 years. How is my industry going to be transformed? And what do we need to do there? I'll give you an example on this. When I was growing up, there was no such a thing called an influencer, right? There was no TikTok. But now, people can genuinely make money being an influencer. It's a legitimate job. That didn't exist 10 years ago. So in the banking and finance sector, what are the things that are going to exist in 10 years that don't exist today? And this is what you need to use AI to actually think and be creative and reimagine your business. It could get very overwhelming. Yes, we heard, we need to do this. Like, how do we get started? AI is a journey. You need to see where you are in your journey currently. Are you at the start? Then let's start experimenting. Do some POCs. Create awareness in the firm. If you've already experimented, gone for the quick wins, see what's the best way you can scale up. Or maybe you're a little bit mature already and you're thinking, I have 20 different AI solutions happening in the firm. I need to bring them together. I need to strategize. So it's very important to really think big. Really imagine how you're going to change the game in your business. But then start small and scale up. So to conclude, I would like to show the video. If I could ask them to play the video for me. So the video you're about to see is one of our, so my team has put together, is a generative AI assistant for a bank. So it's an avatar that is speaking. So I would like you to pay attention to how a chatbot can go beyond just rule-based, menu-based, click here, touch that, to actually really be interactive. With
AI-enabled agent
I'm going to pause.
That focuses on providing customer support through chat and voice channels. It answers questions and directs customers to relevant resources. It can be trained on product knowledge, frequently asked questions, and troubleshooting steps. With the currently displayed agent, we have trained her with data from a fictional bank called ABC Bank. We will ask her questions regarding certain products and services. Let's get started. We can start with the chat. Hello.
Hi. My name is Zenith and I am here to help you with inquiries about ABC Bank. How can I help you today?
I'd like to know how I can register on the new mobile app using my card details.
To register on the new mobile app using your card details, follow these steps. 1. Select the debit card option. 2. Enter your account number or phone number. 3. Enter the last 6 digits on your debit card. 4. Enter your card PIN. 5. Input the 4-digit verification code sent to your phone number. 6. Upon receiving a successful prompt, create and confirm your 6-digit passcode. 7. Create and confirm your 4-digit transaction PIN.
What are the requirements for a change of name for a corporate account?
The requirements for a change of name for a corporate account are a new certificate of incorporation, a letter from the customer requesting a change.
Can someone else collect my checkbook for me?
So that just gives you an idea that,
Yes,
by the way,
a third party can collect
I can ask if you can pause here. So none of these questions were actually pre-built. It's not a static question. It's just the idea of, if I come there and I ask, what products can you give me? My son is about to go to college. That's a very personal question to me, and she's able to assist. While maybe somebody else is more interested in a loan product because they're starting a new business. And this is the future of customer service. And on that note, I'll leave you. Thank you very much, everyone.